Good evening. I am Professor Taco. Today we will be reading George R. R. Martin's, well, it's not actually George R. R. Martin's, George R. R. Martin, Elio M. Garcia Jr., and Linda Antonson's book, The World of Ice and Fire. Good coffee. Serious gourmet shit. Now, if you are new here, it makes sense because this is the first one. I had this idea a long time ago, and I asked somebody permission to do it because it's kind of close to what other people do, and yeah, let's get to this. So please grab your A World of Ice and Fire book and turn to page 5. So I will not be reading this straight up upstairs. If you would have showed up 1 minute earlier, we would have been good. Sorry. That is Mrs. Professor Taco. So I'm not going to be reading this straight up. I've decided I'm not going to read it like blah, 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 blah. Go get an audiobook, right? I'm not an audiobook. This isn't an audiobook. I'm not doing an audiobook. That's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is I will be reading this to myself. Do you have your bookmark? Put it down. You won't need it when you're actually reading. So I'm going to kind of half read, half not, improv a little bit, and we're going to explore the world of Ice and Fire together. Are you open to page 5? This is the Dawn Age. Right? That's where we are. Okay. It says there is no one who can say for certain what happened during the Dawn Age, which makes sense because it was like a really long time ago. It is 40,000 years ago. Holy crap. As some hold, perhaps the number is like only 5,000, they said. So, or even more. No one really knows how long ago. But yeah. So, it would be certain that the world was far more primitive, right? That would make sense. Barbarous is a word they use here. But it says what is little known of these days is that it's contained the oldest texts and tales that written down by the Andals, Valyrians, and the Giscari, and even those distant fabled people like the Ashai and all of them. So what they're doing here is because it's written so long ago and only, whichever civilizations where their work actually survives, that's the only point of view we get of it, right? So it's not like word for word what we know about the Dawn Age. It said what can accurately be told of the Dawn Age? The Easter lands were awash of many people and uncivilized. Okay, so that's like Essos. And the world was uncivilized. There was always the land of always winter. That always sticks. Always winter. And the children existed, the giants existed in Westeros. So we do know that the giants of the Dawn Age didn't, have much of a society, but they were around. And it's kind of it. There was the children of the forest. It says that men of the watch say that wildlings have tales of giants living uneasily along the side of the children. So according to this, the children of the forest and the giants actually did live together. Not quite, it's not in harmony, it said uneasily. So that's kind of cool. Don't want to move too quick, but also there isn't really too much going on in this first page. So we're just learning that giants and the children of the forest lived in Westeros, and there was a bunch of different people who lived in Essos. Oh, cool. So let's turn the page. Page 6. Got this really cool picture of the giant and the children of the forest. Man, I do like how they're completely covered in fur, these giants. Right? What do they got going on there? They're not wearing any pants. They got big feet. So they're just Yetis? That is ponderous. one could ponder that. Are the giants Yetis? No, they're too big to be Yetis. Don't ponder anymore. All right. So the gods that the children worshipped. Now we're getting into something. The old gods. Where they were nameless ones that would they become the gods of the first men. So there's a lot of interesting stuff we can say about the old gods, right? They didn't have any names. We don't really know too much about them. As far as we know, they're tied into green seers and the weirwoods, right? So a lot of sacrifice was going on, a lot of blood sacrifice. The Starks absolutely would kill people and wash their swords in the pool that's outside of their heart tree and their weirwoods. So they would literally give blood to the weirwoods and so on and so forth. Maybe the old gods are actually, White Walkers. That's another thing, or the others. We're not really sure. It would kind of make sense that the ice gods, right, the gods of the first men up north, were the others, and R'hllor, or the red god, the fire god, if you will, they consider the opposite of the fire god as the great other. So it would be kind of like this ice and fire thing. The children who carve the weirwood faces, everybody knows that. Perhaps they give them eyes to their gods so they can actually worship them. With little evidence, claim the green seers, the wise men of the forest, they were able to see through the eyes carved on the weirwoods. Yeah, so we don't really know if the gods could see through that. It wouldn't make sense if they could, right? I mean, they're trees. They don't have eyeballs, even magical trees. That's not how it works. Maybe. Who knows? I do like that it said the wise men of the forest are green seers. Now, that's kind of interesting because the children of the forest are all females, right? And men, if they mean men, the first green seers were children of the forest. So why are they crediting wise men as green seers when we know that green sight came from the children of the forest who are all females? So is there a male equivalent to the children of the forest that were also green seers? I don't know. That's kind of curious. Let's kind of move through here. I'm not really good at reading, so I thought I could read and talk at the same time, but I definitely I can barely read and read at the same time. All right. That was interesting, huh? Not to say green seers did not know the lost arts that belong to the higher mysteries, such as seeing events of great distance and communicating across half a realm, as the Valyrians who claim long after they did. Yeah, so it's saying here that there is possibility that they could use the weirwood net kind of to see far distance, right? Kind of like glass candles. Okay, here's something. So being the account of history of White Harbor from its earliest days, which recounts the practice of blood sacrifice to the old gods, such sacrifices persisted recently as 5 centuries ago, according to accounts of Maester Yarick's proceedings at White Harbor. I think they got to be sooner than that, because I think it's still a thing. Now, it depends on what you mean by blood sacrifice, but we know that after Ned cuts the head off of that dude in like chapter 1, it's in the prologue, chapter 1 when he does it, and then later we see him washing the blood off into that little stream, as I said earlier, in front of the weirwood trees. That's kind of like he's giving them blood now. Maybe it was a little more abundant last time of like earlier where they're like sacrificing them right in front of the weirwoods. But, okay. Let's take a look at page 7. Fool the unworthy telling. I don't got too much here. I was saying how there isn't a lot of... I got nothing. Sorry. I thought I was going to say something else. Let's move. The coming of the first men. So that was enough about the Dawn Age. Dawn Age really is, the humans aren't around yet, so there's no real written history yet. So it's all like, we heard back then this happened type stuff. Okay, so according to the most well-regarded accounts from the Citadel, then they're going to contradict themselves. I know this is going to happen. Anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000 years ago, in the southernmost reaches of Westeros, new people crossed the strip of land bridge in the narrow sea connected to the eastern lands and the western lands where the giants lived. I love this. The most well-regarded accounts, somewhere between 8 and 12. That's 4,000 years. We can pinpoint it. How close? Not really. Like, we're sure it happened somewhere. Think we're in the year 2023, right? We're talking double this. Double this. Sometime in there. So that's seriously like, hey, when was Abraham Lincoln shot? We're pretty sure it was between the year negative 2000 and 2000. You think? All right, maesters, really breaking your backs figuring out the math here. All right. So they crossed over in the broken arm of Dorne, which we already know, which was not broken yet. And so the first men kind of hung out. The first men in the Children of the Forest actually kind of got along, opposed to the children and the Andals didn't get along. Right. Indeed. I like this. We get to see this cool picture of them doing the pact here. So you got the first men actually talking, not this one, talking to the Children of the Forest. It's kind of interesting. So let's talk about this pact. See if we can find it. Oh. All right. All weirwoods on the... so they did it on the Isle of Faces is where they all met, right? So it says all the weirwoods on this island on which the pact was formed were forged. Where the pact was forged, they were carved faces, so literally every weirwood had faces of the gods. The pact and the Order of the Green Men was made afterwards to tend to the weirwoods to protect the Isle. Okay, so that's interesting, right? Because I'm not 100% sure who the Order of the Green Men are, and we've never made it to the Isle of Faces in the books. There's a lot of fan theories that maybe what's his name? Reed Harwind? I can't talk. Harland Reed? Oh my God. How do I get that mixed up? Did go there during the tourney at Harrenhal that he went there. But all right, let's read this little excerpt up here about the Green Men. Whether the Green Men still survive on the island is not clear, although there is an occasional account of some foolhardy young river lord taking a boat to the island, catching the sight of them before the winds will rise up and a flock of ravens will drive them away. So literally anytime anyone tries to make it to the island, magic happens and pushes them away, right? Yeah, it's kind of cool. Nurseries are the nursery tales claiming that there are horned men that have dark green skin and corrupted of the is a corruption of the likely truth, which is the men probably just wore garments and headdresses. All right, let's just talk about the logistics of greened men. How do they, what, you don't live forever, right? So these guys are either immortal or there is an actual society there that, females are a part of and they actually can live, right? Or maybe there's a few of them, and every time a dead one comes, maybe they drive a new one over, visit Ministries, green sidey. But there has to be something going on behind the scenes that are keeping these green men going if they are actually mortals. Or if they're magically live for a very long time, like the Children of the Forest, if they are like the male equivalent of the Children of the Forest, right? But then they weren't forged after the pact was made to keep it. Then they were already magical creatures. Maybe they can live for a very long time. The Isle of the Green Men is really fascinating because we really don't know anything of it. And it's right in the middle of Westeros, right? It's right on the God's Eye. It's right there. And it's kind of funny because it's right there on God's Eye. What else is? Harrenhal. And people constantly, there's always these great councils and these great meetings, and armies always go there, right? Aemond goes there at the beginning of the war. There's just always congregations. All throughout the main series, Tywin Lannister, gets there, and somebody else, and somebody else. So it's a gathering of men, and then right on the island is a gathering of magic. Right there. Is that really interesting? Write that down. Yes. We'll proceed. Turning the page. We're on page 10. Age of Heroes. All right. What do we got for Age of Heroes? All the founders of the houses, right? Well, most of them. We have... We don't really know much what's going on. So we know more than what we knew during the Dawn Age. So Age of Heroes is after the Dawn Age because it's after the first men came over and started building castles, and there was a bunch of kingdoms, and this is what kind of the forming of the world that we know of now is the Age of Heroes. All right. It says the tales we have now are the work of the septums and maesters writing thousands of years after the fact. Yet, unlike the children of the forest and the giants, the first men of the Age of Heroes left behind some ruins and ancient castles that collaborate. So we actually do know some of it, right? It doesn't look like they left any writing except for runes. But yeah. So it's commonly accepted that the Age of Heroes began with the Pact. So that's where the flip is, right? So the Dawn Age has the giants and children living together. And then the first men came, and then they didn't get along until the Pact. And that's the flipping to the Age of Heroes. Okay. All right. Pact began with the Pact, extended throughout thousands of years in which the first men and children lived in peace together. With so much land, they didn't have to really get into each other's grills, right? It was a whole continent. There's not a lot of men yet. First men ruled in their forts, petty kings, and powerful lords. And the children kind of just did their own thing. So it says here, we're now talking about the ancestors of the 7 kingdoms we know today. Name of kings. Names such as Brandon the Builder, Goth the Greenhand, Lan the Clever, and Duran God's Grief are names conjure with likely blah, 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 blah. So those are kind of the big main ones, right? Brandon the Builder most likely built Winterfell. Is also credited with building the wall, which I don't think is true, right? And then also some people credit him with helping build the tower at Old Town and also Storm's End. This dude got around. This is before trains. He's good traveling all over the place. It's nuts. And then you also have Garth Greenhand. And I love Garth Greenhand because he's this amazing legendary figure. Also, much like the Green Men on the Isle of Faces, he also was antlered, right? Garth the Greenhand was this antlered, almost god of fertility. He would wander around, and everywhere he went, gardens would grow, and he would touch people and make them fertile and things like this. So he was very much like this weird god of fertility. Oh, hey, John. What's up? Nothing. Just reading a book to myself. Please grab your A World of Ice and Fire and find me on page 10. So we have Bran the Builder, as we were talking about. Garth the Greenhand was the founder of House Gardner, and his kids were founders of a bunch of others. So one of his kids founded House Gardner, and then there was kids that founded Fossaway and Hornhill, where the Tarleys come from, and all that stuff all came from Garth the Greenhand, right? And then we have Lan the Clever. So this is the first Lannister. I know this, so I don't have to read this too much because it doesn't even get into it. It just says this is Well, then I'm not going to talk too much because it doesn't even get into it yet. Maybe we'll get into it when it gets to the Westerlands history. So besides the legendary kings and the thousands of kingdoms, which the 7 kingdoms were born, stories such as Simeon Star Eyes, Serwyn of the Mere Shield, who killed a dragon with his Mere Shield, and other heroes who became fodder for septums and singers alike. I love how that is. So singers number... But when the singers number Serwyn of the Mere Shield as a Kingsguard. Oh, wow. So some people think of him as a Kingsguard, but that can't be real. There weren't Kingsguard members in the Age of Heroes, right? So that's weird. An institution, it says right here, which is an institution that was only formed during the reign of Aegon the Conqueror, which wouldn't make sense because that's only 200 and something years, not thousands of years. Yeah. So yeah, we can see why a lot of people take this stuff with a grain of salt, is what it says. So a legion of boys made it. Blah, 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 blah. All right, let's move on. We're gonna get from the Age of Heroes. So this is when most of our houses were created. We're getting there. Then we're gonna make it to the Long Night. You can see the freaking ice spider. So please, page 11. Thank you. I expect you to write this stuff down. So as the first men, so the Long Night happened before the coming of Andals. Interesting. As the first men established their realms following the pact, little trouble, whatever. So the history tells us it is also from these histories that we learn of the Long Night, when a season of winter came and lasted a generation in which children were born, grew into adulthood, and many cases died without ever seeing spring. Wow, right? It was a long winter. I live in North Dakota. I know all about long winters. Indeed, the old wives' tale say that they never even beheld the light of day. So it was just literally a complete winter that fell the entire world, and the night never lifted, right? So, this may have, it doesn't matter. I don't need to read this word for word, right? So Lomas Longstrider, in his Wonders of Made by Man, recounts meeting descendants of the Roinar in the ruins of the festival city of Croyan. That sounds cool. Who have tales of darkness that made dwindle and disappear. So made, okay, cool. I'm gonna move past it. So the Long Night's interesting. So we know that it kind of exists in every culture all over, Westeros and Essos. It says here that it is also written that in the Annals of Ashai that such a darkness, a hero who fought against it with a red sword, sounds familiar. His deeds are said to have performed before the rise of Valyria in the earliest age when Old Geese was first forming its empire. These legends spread from west from Ashai. The followings of R'hllor claim that the hero was named Azor Ahai. So that's where we get the term Azor Ahai. The prophecy of his return, so on and so forth. They always prophesy about the return of Azor Ahai all the time. That's what they do. And then there's a legend from ET that states that the sun hid its face from the earth for a lifetime, ashamed that that none could discover, and that disaster was averted only by the deeds of a woman with a monkey's tail. Great, fantastic. So let's talk about real world connotations, right? So the Long Night is something that affected a culture really strongly, but it affected other cultures. And since we didn't have written history, we're not really sure if it's the same thing, right? What does this remind you of? The Great Flood, right? So in the Old Testament, you hear about Noah and his ark and all that in this Great Flood. But also in the Epic of Gilgamesh, you hear about a Great Flood. So, and probably others. I'm not a theology major or a professor. I'm not a theology professor. So this kind of reminds me of that, right? Of different civilizations look way back thousands of years and have the same big global thing. That doesn't mean that maybe all of them come from the one culture that handled it, right? Or probably not, or they all handled it in different ways. We don't really know. How could Azor Ahai stop the long knife from happening, and the last hero stop the long knife from happening, and the old lady with the monkey tail stop the long knife from happening? One of them did. And is it one person that everybody now calls different names, or was it a bunch of people solved the issue locally? I don't know. It's very interesting. However, if this winter did take place, it has tales say, as the tales say, yeah, I don't got too much more for the long night. I really thought there'd be a lot more for the long night. All right, so I'm now turning to page 12. How the long night came to an end. There you go. Now we're getting into it. So in the north, they tell the last hero, right? It said, who sought out the children of the forest and his companions, abandoning him or dying one by one as they face ravenous giants. It says cold servants. That's creepy. And the others themselves. So the cold servants must be whites, right? So as they face the whites, the zombies, right? The servants of the cold. I don't think I've ever heard them called the cold servants before. That's really cool. So he did travel up. They traveled all the way up north, according to legend, the last hero. I do find it funny that he's called the last hero. Alone, he finally reached the children, despite the efforts of the White Walkers, and all the tales agree that this was the turning point, and thanks to the children, the first men of the Night's Watch. Oh, it's saying the first men of the Night's Watch, so you're already saying that this is the Night's Watch, right? Banded together and were able to fight and win the battle for the dawn. So the last battle that broke the endless winter and then sent the others fleeing to the icy north, so it knocked them up back north, and we haven't seen them since. Well, now we have. Now 6,000 years later, or 8,000 if you're following the other people, the wall made to defend the realms of men, still manned by sworn brothers of the Night's Watch. So it's saying here the Night's Watch was descendants of the first companions the companions of the last hero. All right. I guess Bran the Builder didn't build the wall, right? Because wouldn't the wall have been made after? I don't really feel like that's ever said when the wall was made. We're about to move pretty far after this. Because now we're getting into Rise of Valyria, which is, on the other side. Which I don't want to read too much of it. So it said, as Westeros recovered from the long night, a new power was raising in Essos. So was Essos still affected so hard from the long night? How come they were able to, how come Valyria was able to rise really powerful, right, when everybody else was still suffering? So maybe the long night didn't affect Valyria as much? That's interesting. Take a drink every time I say that's interesting. So it says, the vast continent stretching from the narrow sea, which was right next to Westeros, of course, to the fabled Jay Sea and all the way to Uthos, seems to be the place for civilization as we know it developed. So just like in our real world, most civilization came from, the eastern part of Eurasia, right? From that cradle of the world and Africa, and then worked its way up, right? Civilization. Okay, this is great. So it says the civilizations, so it says first of these, and it says, notwithstanding the dubious claims of Karth and the Yeti-ish legends of the great empire of the Dawn, as the difficulties of finding any truth in these tales, of legendary Ashai, rooted in Old Gis. So this is saying, guys, Old Gis was the first. And it's like, don't listen to the dang Karth and Yeti and the Great Empire of the Dawn crap. Gis was first. I don't know. Great Empire of the Dawn is a lot more interesting. You would think that they were first, because that's what later became Yeti, and we really hear about that ending during the Long Night, right? So you hear a lot about the Great Empire of Dawn having all these different emperors, the Amethyst and the Jade and the Ruby and the Sapphire and the Leaf Stone, the whatever, Agate Empire. But it ends with the Amethyst Empress being killed by the Bloodstone Emperor, who then possibly started the Long Night, possibly. I don't know if this is going to get into that. But that would have all been before this, because that ends with the Long Night. And then Geese raised up after it. So I don't know. I don't think Geese was the first civilization in Old Geese was the first civilization in Essos. I do not. Just like how Greece isn't the first civilization in our own world. It was the first one that we still have written language and everything from. But, I mean, definitely Mesopotamians and all this other stuff were all there first, right? So that's what I'm saying, that it's dubious of the Maesters to think that Old Geese was the first civilization in Essos. Is everybody reading? Did you bring your reading material? All right. Still on page 13. So the great beauty of the Valyrians, with their hair of the palest silver and their gold eyes and the shades of purple and silver or gold and their eyes of purple, is well known. God, the Valyrians. I do like that in this world. The like creepy incest people are just like gorgeous, When our world, you get all Habsburg jawed. But not in this world. You get all Valyrian-y. I don't want to speak too much. So the Valyrians had no kings. They had the freehold. So it was a lot like the Romans having their republic before the Roman emperors came. Julius Caesar had to go mess it all up for everybody. 5 great wars between the freehold and Old Geese. So there were wars between the freehold of Valyria trying to become the main superpower in the Geese. I always want to call them Greece. In Old Geese. Yep. So it says, during the 5th and final war that the freehold chose to make sure that they would be no six, the ancient brick walls of Old Geese, first erected by Grazdan the Great in the ancient day, were razed. The colossal pyramids and temples and homes were given over to dragon flame in the fields. Yeah. So they burned it all down to make sure it wouldn't raise back up. That's the end of Geese. Again, going back to real world counterparts, I see a lot of Rome with the freehold of Valyria, and Geese being Greece, which they did fight against each other, towards the end of Greece. So it did look like just a bunch of shepherds found some dang dragons, and that's it. Then they just were like, let's just take over the entire world, right? So it says the Valyrians told themselves that they were descended from dragons, and they were kin to those who they now controlled. So the Valyrians literally thought they were part dragon. And who's to say they weren't? I don't know. This is a weird magical world. They might be part dragon. I don't know. Maybe there was some weird blood magic to make them more dragon-esque. But yeah, now there's a bunch of Slaver's Bay stuff up here, which I'm not going to read. I mean, I'm not really going to read any of this. We're just moving on. So, yeah. All right. We're moving to page 15. We're going into Valyrian's children. So these are all the cities in everything that came up from Valyria. So the Valyrians learned one deplorable thing from the Giscari: slavery. Yay! Ugh, and slavers. The Giscari whom they conquered were the first to thus be enslaved. That's irony, huh? You enslaved the slavers? Man, they probably weren't that great of workers because they just were slavers their whole lives and they never had to do anything because they had slaves. And then the Valyrians took over and it's like, hey, mow my lawn. And they're like, I don't know how to mow lawns. We had slaves for that. Like, well, I better figure it out. That's dark. Jeez, Professor Tuck. All right. Oh, here we learn of the first Valyrian steel swords, too. So, yeah, it's just talking a lot about enslaving old geese, and that's where Slaver's Bay is going to, come up from, and other stuff. Kohor and Novos were other cities. They were founded following religious schisms. Others, such as Old Volantis and Lys, were trading colonies from, first and foremost, founded by the wealth merchants in Noble who purchased the right to rule themselves as clients of the freeholder rather than be subjects. I want to buy a couple of slaves. Who? Us? Can we just rule ourselves? All right. Let's see what you did there. That's insane. So these cities chose their own leaders by receiving archons dispatched from Valyria. It says often on Dragonback. Yeah, if Valyrians are going to go and visit their subjects, they're probably going to take dragons, right? You're going to have to. So, yeah, we're kind of... Oh, yeah. So Braavos is the unique one among them. So Braavos was actually founded by slaves that ran away, right? And it was founded by slaves. And it was hidden for a very long time, which is really cool. It was kind of more north. So for centuries, the Devosi remained hidden. The Bravosi remained hidden from the world. The remote lagoon. None of those words. The remote lagoon. Remote lagoon would be a cool band name. And even after it unveiled itself, Braavos continued to be known as the secret city. And the Bravosi people were no people. Who were no people. Scores of races. Oh, okay. It's not one type of people. That's what they're saying. Because the Bravosi were a mixture. Right? Okay. Let's get to page 17. I do like this picture here of old Valyria because it really looks so, science fiction more than fantasy, right? There's a lot more crazy weird going on, here where it seems so more fantastical than the Westeros and the times that we're used to. And I do like that it looks like they're almost in like Braavos, but also like Venice, right? Like they have canals, but their canals are just lava. It's insane. That'd be so hot. You couldn't do that. Yeah, so it's just gonna end up talking about a bunch of stuff, and it talks about the Rhoynar, and the Dothraki, and so on and so forth. But let's get to the arrival of the Andals. So we're going back to Westeros. So Andals left Andalos, which was in Essos, and they fled? They fled from, the Valyrians and other stuff. Not Valyrians. Yeah, Valyrians and other stuff. And that's how they started taking over Westeros. Is they ruled and they crossed, before they crossed the Narrow Sea. So it says Andalos stretch from the Axe, which is up kind of north Essos, which is now Bravosi land, in south as far as the flatlands and the Velvet Hills. And Andals brought iron weapons with suits and iron plate. So yeah, so think the first men are still kind of in the Bronze Age over in Westeros. They're still rocking like bronze armor, not really crazy powerful stuff. And the Andals start rocking over in full steel plate, and it says iron plate, right? Yeah, iron plate. So not quite steel, but still better technology, better people. Andals Johns. And of course, what they take over the Westeros, first and foremost, the most important thing they brought was the Faith of the Seven. And that is going to change Westeros forever because they're bringing over this new, really powerful religion. The Rhoynar, who were already an advanced civilization at the time, but they knew of iron, it says, and they too knew of iron. So it takes only the study of the map to realize that the earliest Andals must have had some contact with Rhoynar, and the Darkwash in Nyoni lay directly in the path of the Andal migration. So they are remnants of the Rhoynish outposts in Andalos. According to the Norvoshi historian Doro Glafith, that's a heck of a name, buddy. And it would not be the first time that men learned of working iron from the Rhoynar. And it said the Valyrians learned the art from them as well. So a lot of people are saying that the Rhoynar is where working iron came from. That's cool. I didn't know that. I always kind of thought, the Andals kind of came up with it on their own. But no, it looks like the Rhoynar did. So I'm going to skip some of this. A lot of Holgor of the Hill. A lot of Andal stuff. But let's get them over, right? It's about the arrival of the Andals. So let's get them over to Westeros here. So for centuries, the Andals prospered in the hills of Andalos. Yeah. And then, come on. At the mouth of the Rhoynar, the Valyrians founded their first of their many colonies there, Volantis, which is the first Valyrian colony that's on the big mouth of the Rhine River. So the Rhine, think it's like the Rhine in our day, right? It's kind of the separation of Western Europe and Eastern Europe. I'm not talking about Asia, right? Those are those mountains in Russia. But I'm talking about once you can kind of get past the Rhine, you start talking Eastern Europe. And the East, you got Germany and, you got like France and Britain and Spain in the West. And then once you get over, so the Rhine in here is a really big separation where you have like your Andals on the west side of it. And once you pass over the Rhine is where you start getting your geese, your Valyrians, things like that. And the Rhoynar kind of lived all the way down that river. So now you have the Valyrians moving up towards that area. They're moving more west. So, yeah. What do I got here? Oh, I have a couple hand-drawn maps that my wife did. Well, maybe they're not hand-drawn. I've just got lots of maps back here. I bet she forgot she had those from when she first read the books. They're colored, not hand-drawn. All right. So let's knock these these Andals out of Essos, shall we? So the Valyrians had denied the Andals the promise of the seven of the seven on Essos, but in Westeros they were free, made zealous by the conflict of the fight. The warriors of the Andals carved the seven-pointed star upon their bodies and swore that by their blood that the seven will not rest. Okay, so we have why they're getting booted, right? Because the Andals are not leaving the Faith of the Seven. So they can't do it here in Valyria, so now they're bouncing. So that's one main reason why they leave. So their success gave Westeros a new name, which I can't read. Rish Alahiroli, the land of the Andals, as the Dothraki now name it. So that's what the Dothraki call it, the land of the Andals. It is agreed that by Septums and Singers and the Maesters alike that the first place the Andals landed was the Fingers of the Vale. So remember, they didn't cross over the land bridge. They started landing by ship, and they came in the Vale, which is cool. So the Vale of Arryn, carving the seven-pointed star. The carvings of the seven-pointed star are scattered upon rocks and stones throughout the Vale, a practice that is eventually fell out of use as the Andals Congress. So it's kind of cool. When they first landed, they started carving the seven-pointed star all over stuff in the Vale when the Andals first came over. So sweeping through the Vale with fire and sword, the Andals began their conquest of Westeros. So now they're starting to actually take over Westeros. And eventually some of the first men submitted. And as I noted earlier, there are still houses in the Vale who proudly proclaim descendants of the first men, such as the Redforts and the Royces. So keep in mind exactly what it just said. There are still big main houses that, even where they first got conquered, that still claim that they're first men houses. Even though they probably have married Andals so much that their blood, is completely mixed, but they still have that first man culture, right? Good point. Sorry. I'm reading a book from Big Maester right now, so I'm getting polluted. Pollute me more, Big Maester. All right. Where's your book? Big Maester's is all we got. Or do you subscribe to the Singers and the Septums? Because that's it. I love that every time they're like, according to history, they don't say history. They say the Septum, Singers, and the Maesters alike. So sometimes the big three agree on something. But what they're agreeing on is the Andals coming over to the Vale. So Singers say of Andal hero, Sir Artus Arryn, hey, the Arryns, rode upon a falcon to slay the Griffin King upon the giant's lance. That's awesome. That's great. So House Arryn was founded by this dude named Artus who rode upon a giant falcon to slay the Griffin King that was roosting on top of the giant's lance, thereby founding the kingly line of House Arryn. So that's how they became kings, is they killed the Griffin King. Of course, it probably didn't go that way, right? Was it really a guy who's like a griffin? Was it really a griffin up there? Like an eagle horse, lion thing? Nah, come on. Really? So was it just a guy who had Griffin as his sigil or liked griffins? Or maybe his name was Peter Griffin. Maybe he killed Peter Griffin. So good old Aaron formed House Aaron by murdering Peter Griffin. Take that, Big Maester. So now we have, the founding of House Arryn. So we talked earlier about the founding of House Stark, founding of Lannister, Garth the Green Hand, and was there another one that we? Oh yeah, Durin God's Grief, which founded House Durrandon, which they won't make it too long, but make it quite a while. So they killed the Griffin King, and then the Vale was secured, and the Andals turned their attention to the west of Westeros. So the Vale was the first big Andal kingdom founded by House Arryn for murdering a poor Peter Griffin who probably couldn't even swing a sword. So, it says the Vale was secured, and the Andals turned to the west of Westeros, or the rest of Westeros, and poured forth through the Bloody Gate In the wars that followed, the Andal adventurers carved out small kingdoms from the old realms of the First Men and fought one another as often as they fought their own enemies. So, yeah, it's not like the Andals came over completely allied, right? They fought each other. They fought everything, right? They were trying to just carve out land, you know? They were conquerors. Yeah. Colonizers, if you will. They were definitely colonizers. So in the wars over the Trident, it said that as many as 7 Andal kings joined forces to the last true king of the hills and rivers, Christopher the Fourth. God, you gotta love the name Christopher. Call him Tristan? Christopher? So it's the name Tristan, like Christian, but George or whoever combined Tristan instead of with Tristan, combined it with Christopher, so it was Christopher. Fantastic. Great namification. That's pretty awesome. So it said who was the descendant of the First Men defeated him. So Christopher the Fourth, his heir Christopher the Fifth provided unable to defend his father's legacy, so the kingdom fell to the Andals. So it was the first house kingdom in the last first house kingdom in the rivers and the hills. So that's probably why the Riverlands don't have their Starks, right? They don't have their first man house because good old Christopher and his son Christopher and his cousin Christopher and his aunt Christopher and their really weird cousin Tristan, they didn't work out. Too many trysts. They didn't know who each other were. They would say, "Hey, Tris, we're getting attacked," and he's like, "Christopher the Fourth or Christopher the Fifth?" He's like, "No, Tristan, your weird cousin." "Oh man, now we're getting attacked. Why didn't you warn us?" "I tried to warn you. You got all confused. Too many Tristans and Christophers." So in the same era, one Andal remembered in legend as, this is a great name, Urg the Kingslayer. Erreg. Urg. Good old Urg. God, if anyone needed a nickname, it was good old Urg the Kinslayer. Wow, not even Kingslayer, Kinslayer. Urg killed his brother. It was probably jealousy from having a better name. Came across the Great Hall of Highheart. Hey, there's Highheart. There, while under the protection of the kings of the First Men, the children of the forest had tended to the mighty carved weirwoods that crowned it. 31 31 different weirwoods. When Urg's warriors sought to cut down the trees. Come on, Urg. Are you mad that they got cool names too? That's probably why they stopped saying the names of the old gods, because Urg got all jealous and chopped them all down. The First Men was said to have fought beside the children, but the might of the Andals was too great. Though the children and First Men made valiant efforts to defend their holy grove, they were slain. From Urg. Oh no, Urg, Kinslayer, you. The tall tellers now claim that the ghosts of the children still haunt the hill by night. To this day, rivermen shun the place. Yeah, the ghosts of Highheart. We hear about that in the books, right? That goes all the way back to Urg. I'm running out of coffee. All right. You guys want to get over to Andals? Let's move it. Time to move it. Regardless, the few children remaining fled or died, and the First Men found themselves losing war after war. All right, we're getting close to 1,000 ships, but we got to finish off these Andals like the First Men couldn't. So the battles and war were endless, but eventually the southern kingdoms fell. Along with the Valemen, some submitted to the Andals and taking up the faith of the Seven. In many cases, the Andals took wives and daughters, so they married into the rest of the First Men houses, right? So they didn't all die out. They married into the First Men houses. So that's why there's still Lannisters and, well, there's not still Dondarrions, but, or no, Durandans. There are Dondarrions. There's not Durandans anymore or gardeners, but they didn't marry into those houses. So even the Ironborn, the fierce, we haven't heard from those psychopaths yet. What are the Ironborn up to? The fierce sea-roving warriors who must have first thought themselves safe upon their isles fell to wave of Andal conquest, for though it took 1,000 years for the Andals to turn their attention to the Iron Islands, they still did. They did so with renewed zeal. The Andals swept over the islands, extinguishing the line of Euron Redhand. Oh my God, Euron Redhand. No! Urron. Euron Redhand. I wonder what color his hand was. Which had ruled by axe and sword for 1,000 years? You guys ruined that? Good old Euron Redhand ruled for 1,000 years. And the Andals got rid of him? That's messed up. Think about how hard it is to, get elected for your second, fourth year term. This dude did it 1,000. That's a lot of 4-year terms. He got reelected all over the place. 1,000 years? And they just went and took him out. Damn, Andals. Oh, here's another. This is a guy who writes. I must have missed where they introduced this guy. Herurig writes that at first the new Andal king sought to force worship of the Seven onto the Ironborn, but the Ironborn would not have it. They're like, you just killed frickin' Euron Redhand. Dude's been king for 1,000 years, and now you want us to follow your god? They're not having it. Instead, they were allowed by the Andals to keep worshiping the drowned god. Yay! Everyone loves the drowned god. Jeez. As on the mainland, the Andals married the wives and daughters of the Ironborn. And the children, they had children by them. So the Andals are getting mixed into the Ironborn now. But not the North. We haven't heard about the Andals taking the North, right? Oh, here's the next line. I'm on page 20. As the North and the North alone, they were able to withstand the Andals and keep them at bay. And thanks to the swamps of the Neck and the ancient keep of Mount Caelan, the number of Andals' armies that were sent to destroy in the Neck could not be easily reckoned. Whatever. They didn't take the North. I'm not reading it out loud all the time. So there you go. That's the Andals. It's pretty interesting. So they didn't make it all the way up. I like that it took them 1,000 years to conquer. That's a weird. It's weird when they throw out these long amount of time, right? And since we're all learning about it at once, it seems like it's happening in succession, right? They took this place, and 1,000 years later, they took this place. Think about that, though. What was going on in year 10? We weren't even in the Americas yet, right? So imagine in 24, 1,000 years after 1492, in 2492, somebody was like, in the name of Columbus, I'm taking Antarctica. Wait, what? Just keep it going. We'll let those guys live. All right, bad example. I could have said South America, but I realized they did still take South America. So in Australia, we're going to keep going now. We've been here for 1,000 years. Australia has been messing us up. Let's go take Australia in the name of Columbus. What? It's 1,000 years ago, dude. That's what that's like. They're like, you know what? I'm sick of them. We never conquered them. It's like, what do you mean we? We're not part of the culture that came over. It's 1,000 years ago. All right. The last of the great migrations. Yes. So we got one more type of man. So whenever the kings talk, they say the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the first men. So we got to hear about the Rhoynar. So the last of the great migrations that happened was, the Rhoynar and their 10,000 ships, which is a lot of ships. 10,000 ships? Gee. Like, wow. One guy, like, can't sail, so he, like, knocks one ship. That ship, like, knocks a ship, knocks a ship, knocks a ship, knocks a ship. Like, 4 hours later, and that, like, way down the line, somebody's getting knocked, and they're like, why are we all doing this? It's like, Fred over there couldn't sail. Why are we in 10,000 ships? Could we just send 100 at a time? Wait a week? The mightiest river in the world. So yeah, these guys are from the Rhoyne, which we already talked, right? So eventually the Rhoyne, after the Andals left, they finally got sick of the Valyrians doing this Valyrian stuff. They constantly come attack us with dragons and junk. I'm sick of this. Let's, you and 10,000 of your buddies, let's get some ships. Let's get the F out of here. That's what they said. That's what they did. It says, many tributaries crossed the western Essos along their banks and so on and so forth. Yeah, whatever. So the Mother Rhoyne, everybody from all the different river tributaries that are attached to the Rhoyne, they're all leaving. So it says fishers, traders, teachers, scholars, workers in wood and stone and metal. They raised their elegant towns and cities from the headwaters of the Rhoyne down to her mouth. It's weird when they call a river a her, because it's like, oh, we're sailing inside her. It's like, oh, weird. All right. Good old Mother Rhoyne. All right. She's got a lot of people inside her. Yeah, I don't have to read all of the Rhoynish, but there, it's not one people is what it's saying. So it's all of the children of Rhoyne. So the Mother Rhoyne. So it's a lot of different people. And it said there was a lot of art and music in their cities. Oh, we got a lot for the Rhoynish. It's a whole freaking bunch. So it says they're really peaceful people, and for centuries they lived in peace, and so on and so forth. Let's just skip. As the first Valyrian, I'm on page 22. First Valyrian outposts grew in towns, and those towns into cities. However, some of the Rhoynar were like, what are we doing? All these Valyrians are doing stuff around here? That ain't good. So... and then it's when they made the free city of Volantis soon rivaled in the story port of Sahoy, which them each of them commanding one of the mothers the Mother Rhoyne's 4 mouths. Okay, so they're talking about rival cities at the mouth of the Rhoyne right now. Oh, God, I don't care. Why do I not really care about the Rhoyne? Just, I want to get back to Westeros. Looks like a bunch of wars going on. Rhoynish wars. All right, finally we're getting here. So, only Princess Nymeria Nysar spoke against... here, let's go up one more. So, I'm... bottom column of 22. So it says the utter destruction of one of the richest and most beautiful cities in the Rhoyne and the enslavement of her people shocked and dismayed the remaining Rhoynar princes. So that's interesting. Now we're finally getting somewhere. So the Rhoynish people are princes and princesses. They're principalities. Much like how Dorne will be after the Rhoynish people make it to Dorne. So principalities started all the way back in good old Mother Rhoyne, deep in the river, deep inside that Mother River. They shocked and dismayed the Rhoynar princesses. We shall not be slaves unless we join together to end this threat, and declared the greatest of them, Garen the Choyan. Yeah, great name. The warrior prince called upon his fellows to join. So this dude, what did I say his name? Garen. Garen he didn't want to sail. He didn't want to get on those 10,000 ships. He wanted to fight the Valyrians. And Nymeria was like, no, I don't want to do that. She said, the war we cannot hope to win. So she So she warned, but the other princes shouted her down and pledged their swords to Garin. So yeah, so they kind of split. I don't think I ever knew this. So Nymeria left as other people went to go fight, and they presumably died. The largest army that West Essos has ever seen soon assembled at Croyan under the command of Prince Garin. According to Bellicar, all these freaking names, it was 250,000 strong. Wow. That's a lot of strongs. From the headwaters of the Rhine down to the many mouths, every man of fighting age took sword to join. So yeah, it's a lot. Garin divided his numerous hosts into 3 parts. One marched down. It doesn't matter where he marched. Let's just get to what happened. Prince Garin led his gathered might downriver, destroying every village and town and outpost in his path. Oh, I don't care. He won his first battle somewhere. Here we go. I saw the word dragon. It must be the end. And the dragons came. So I skipped a paragraph. I'm on the bottom of 23, or I'm side of 23 right now. And the dragons came, not 3 as Princess had faced he faced another part, but 300. So he beat 3 dragons once, and he's like, dragons? Ha, whatever. And these guys are like, no, we got 300. And he's like, oh, well, we are right effed up. We're effed right up the mother Rhine, aren't we? Yeah, so Tails, yeah. All right, against their fires, they couldn't do anything. So tens of thousands burned from these 300 dragons that embraced the Mother Rhine would offer them protection against the dragon flame only to drown. So they tried to dive into the river to be embraced by their goddess, the Mother Rhine. And the Mother Rhine's like, dude, you couldn't drown. I'm water. What are you doing diving in me? I'm water. You can't breathe me. And they're like, gargle, gargle. And they died. I guess it's better. I don't know. It's better, dragon flame or drowning. God, none of them. That's horrible. Of course, the river boiled because there's 300 dragons. So Garin the Great was captured alive. Wow, you made it out of that fight with 300 dragons, huh? Good job, Garin the Great. Was captured alive to make his and made to watch his people suffer for their defiance. His warriors were shown no mercy. The Valentines and their Valyrian king put them to sword. So many that it was said that they turned the great harbor of Volantis red as far as the eye could see. Yeah, you're messing with the wrong people there, Garin. You're not that great, are you? Therefore, the victory gathered their own the victorious gathered their own forces around the river, sacking everything and taking over crap. Yeah, that sucks. All right, let's move past. I mean, they failed, right? So. A cage was hung from the walls at Cairn that Prince might, so that the Prince might witness the enslavement of the women. Oh my God, I don't need to read all this crap. Just sad stuff. All right, higher on the Rhine in the Nysar, Princess Nymeria. Hey, we're back to Nymeria. Soon received word that Garin just got freaking messed up in the enslavement of the people. And the same fate awaited her in her own city. So that's when she's like, let's get the F out of Dodge. Legend tells that Nymeria took 10,000 ships to sea, searching for a new home for her people beyond the reach of Valyrian and the Dragon Lords. Beldacar, here's this guy again, argues that this number was vastly inflated, perhaps much as tenfold. Wow. So just maybe 1,000 ships, which is still insane. I don't know if what did I name the guy who couldn't sail? Fred? I don't know if Fred's gonna, 1,000 ships you might be able to space out a little more than 10,000. Other chroniclers offer other numbers. Who cares? Wow, this is still going. This is the largest chapter yet. Nymerian or 10,000 ships. We only got a couple more pages, then I'm going to call it, guys. So let's get through this 10,000 ships. Because after the doom of Valyria, we are calling it. All right. So she goes off. More about Beldacar, insisting that the voyage was long and terrible. Yeah, we know. Beldacar. Ugh. More than 100 ships floundered and sank in the first storm she encountered. As many or more turned back in fear. So yeah, they were going to make a TV show about this. That'd be kind of cool. I think they'll just call it 10,000 ships. Because there's a lot here. I mean, there's like so much that Nymeria and her ships are going to do. And I'm not even going to read it all. So they did land in Southeros. Let's get to that here. Nymeria refused and took her fleet to sea again. So it says here, let's... Okay, so they went to the Summer Sea and the Basilisk Isles where it didn't work out. Yeah, so they keep showing up and a lot of them die and then she leaves. That's kind of what's going on here a lot. So Nymeria refused and took her ship to sea again. And amongst... Yeah, so she said hoping to find and refuse amongst the... All right, she went to Southeros. Why am I stuttering through this? Jesus Christ. So she went to Southeros and she went to Basilisk Point and then kept going in the glistening green rivers of the Zamoios amongst quicksand, crocodiles, and rotting. That's just it. Rotting, half-devoured trees. Princess Nymeria herself remained on the ships, remained with the ships at the Zetamir, and the Geskari colony abandoned for 1,000 years. So there was a Geskari colony on Southeros that was abandoned. Their riches found it. So yeah, so she found some gold and stuff when she made it to Southeros. But the Rhinar did not thrive there. The swollen, wet heat. I think we get to, yeah, here we go. Here's some nasty stuff. So it said the swollen, wet heat oppressed their spirits, and swarms of stinging flies spread one disease after another. Green fever, the dancing plague, which sounds fantastic. The dancing plague? Somebody gets sick and they start like tap dancing or something? Why is it called the dancing plague? Because they can't guys, something's going on here. Whoa! That's a great plague. I mean, as far as plagues can be great. Blood boils, weeping sores, sweet rot. What the heck is sweet rot? Your flesh is rotting, but it just smells fantastic. Somebody baking caramel rolls? No, dude's just rotting over there. Sounds delicious. Smells great, my guy. Thanks. Sweet rot. What a horrible name. The young and very old proved especially vulnerable to such contagions. Even to splash in the river was to court death. So they were on this river, but they couldn't even go into it because it was infested with schools of carnivorous fish, piranha, and tiny worms that laid their eggs in the flesh of the swimmers. Gross! 2 of the new towns on Basilisk Point were raided by slavers, so the slavers could live there. And they didn't last too long. So whilst Yin had to... Okay, so they did make it to Yin. Did I already say that? Which is the big city in ancient city that doesn't really exist but did, that's abandoned in Southeros. When they were there, they had to get carried off in chains. They had to contend with the attacks from the brindled ghouls of the jungle deeps. So brindled men, right? Yeah, Seamus, sweet rot. It's like sour leaf, yeah. But sweet rot, just I don't know. Sour leaf makes sense, right? Because leaves can be sour, but can somebody's rotted flesh be sweet? All right. So so for the next 3 years, and the Rhoynar wandered around. They made it to Nath, the island of butterflies. Remember that, where Missandei came from in the books, in the show? Yeah, but they find out that there's the butterflies bring disease to anyone who wasn't from there, so they had to go. Eventually, come on, battered and torn, the remainder of the 10,000 ships sailed west. Finally! And they made it to Westeros. After so much wandering, the ships even less seaworthy. Yeah, so they got just wrecked, right? They traveled for so long. The fleet did not arrive in Dorne complete. Even now, there are isolated pockets of Rhoynar on the Stepstones. So they did arrive on colonies of the Rhoynar survived in other places before they made it all the way there. So some of them stayed in the Stepstones, which is kind of great, claiming descent from those who were shipwrecked there. Other ships blown off course and made it to Lys, Tyrosh, giving themselves up to slavery, yay, or a watery grave. The remaining ships made landfall on the coast of Dorne, near the mouth of the Greenblood, not far from ancient sandstone walls of the Sand Ship, seat of House Martell. So Sand Ship now is what they call Sunspear, I guess. I didn't know that. So seat of House Martell. So we haven't found out how House Martell became one of the greatest houses in Westeros. But here we go. So it was just a random house in good old Sand Ship, and with partnering up with Nymeria and the remainder of her 10,000 ships, they're able to get more powerful, right? So dry, desolated, and thinly peopled. Dorne at this time was a poor land, and so they hung out in Dorne. It is said that amongst the Rhoynar who came to Dorne with Nymeria, 8 of every 10 were women. Oh, wow. But a quarter of those were warriors. So, warrior women. Yeah, Rowan had a lot of warrior ladies. So that's, again, why Dorne is less sexist than the rest of Westeros, right? Because this very populated of warrior women led by a warrior woman who, good old Nymeria, right? Who everybody likes to name their direwolves after, show up. Or they read to their friends under weirwood trees. Everyone loves Nymeria. Mors Martell took Nymeria to wife. So this is how the Martells are getting power here. So Mors Martell took her to wife. Hundreds of his knights, squires, and lord bannermen also wed Rhoynish women, and many of them who were already wed took them as paramours. All right. Thus, the two peoples were united by blood, and these unions, So I do know that Mors Martell doesn't make it super long because Nymeria has a bunch of husbands later on. So it said the Rhoynar brought considerable wealth with them because they got gold and stuff from Southros or whatever. The Rhoynar brought considerable wealth. I just said that. Their artisans of metalwork and stonemasons brought skills of advanced and skip. To celebrate these unions, they made certain of her people that could not again retreat. They burned all of their ships. You guys are stuck here in Dorne. You're not going anywhere. Some of the Rhoynar mourned the loss of the ships, and rather than embracing their new land, they took to plying the waters of the Greenblood, finding its pale shadow of the Mother Rhoyne, who then continued to worship, and still to this day there are the orphans of the Greenblood, which is really cool, right? So these people came over from River Rhoyne, and they worshipped the river as like their mother, their goddess. So when they made it finally made it to Dorne, they found another river, but it wasn't nearly as cool or amazing. But since they didn't have their mother anymore, but they were still religious to this weird river religion, they call themselves the Orphans. And since the new river was the Greenblood, the Orphans of the Greenblood. You meet a couple of them in, I want to say, the 4th book. And it's really cool. I like the Greenblood Orphans. They're great. It's really weird, interesting pocket culture in Dorne. The flames lit the coast for 50 leagues and hundreds of leaking husks, and they burned them. They burned the ships. Princess Nymeria named it Mors Martell, the Prince of Dorne in the Rhoynish style. So yeah, the whole, I was just saying, so the principality thing came from the Rhoynar tradition. Interesting. Cool. Write that down. Asserting his dominion, the red sands and the white, and all the lands and rivers and mountains of the great salt sea. So, yeah, we wanted to take over Dorne. The supremacy easier declared than achieved. Yeah, so for years followed the Martells, they had to, and their Rhoynish partners had to fight a lot of people. So they had to subdue petty king after another. It said that no fewer than 6 conquered kings were sent to the wall. So they kept conquering more kings and sending them up to the wall, which is a long walk. They're in Dorne. It's crazy that tradition, because you would think if somebody told me, hey, I'm taking your house and I'm banishing you to the wall. Where's the wall? In Alaska. I would make it to Winnipeg and just be like, well, no one knows about it here. And I just start working as a dishwasher in Winnipeg. I'm not going all the way to Alaska. You know what I'm saying? Like, the second they get out of Dorne, why don't these kings just go, hey, I'm not a conquered king. You guys don't know. There's no email around here. We don't all have Facebook. Like, no one knows what's going on. That's crazy that they listened and went all the way up. So where are we at here? No more than 6 conquered kings were sent to the wall in golden fetters. So she put them in golden fetters. All right. By Nymeria and her prince, until only the greatest of her foes remained. So Yorick, Ironwood, they call it, but it's with a Y. Ironwood, Yarnwood. The Blood Royal. Oh, cool. All right, that's a cool nickname. 5th of his name. How long do we have? All right. This guy's got a lot of names. Yorick Ironwood, the Blood Royal, 5th of his name, Lord Ironwood, Warden of the Stoneway, Knight of the Wells, King of the Red March, King of the Green Belt, and King of the Dornish. That's all one dude? Holy crap. All right. So for 9 years, Mors Martell and his allies, amongst them the houses of Skyreach, Toland of Ghost Hill, and House Dane, the Danes of Starfell, and House Uller of the Hellholt. So I have shorts made for House Toland and for the Ullers, which are great, by the way. Check them out. So they struggled against the Ironwoods, Yornwoods, whatever, and his bannermen, the Jordanes, the Tor, the Wills. I have a video about Will of Wills, too, of the Stoneway, together, and the Blackmonts, and the Corgils, and many more. So this was like a big split of like Northern Dorne and Southern Dorne fighting here. When Mors Martell fell to Yorick Ironwood's sword in the 3rd Battle of the Boneway, Princess Nymeria assumed sole command of his armies 2 more years of battle, but in the end, it was Nymeria that Yorick Ironwood bent the knee to, Nymeria who ruled therefore after from Sunspear. So she must have made, the old place they landed, they must have changed the name to Sunspear, right? So, all right. Though she married twice more, the force was Lord Uller. She married an Uller. Wow. You married an Uller? Ullers are crazy. Of Hellholt. Their house is called Hellholt. You gonna marry him? All right. And later, the dashing Davos Dane of Starfeld. Well, that I'm okay with. I like that even this far back, like this far back, but we know he was dashing. This Dane, whew, he's like a Hemsworth. He's just handsome. Know what I'm saying? Nymeria herself remained the unquestioned ruler of Dorne, even though she had all those husbands. They knew who ruled. She survived dozens of attempts on her life, put down 2 rebellions. She lived for so long. Like, she got them that whole journey and then landed there and won all of these wars and then still ruled. Wow. When at last she died, it was the eldest of her 4 daughters by Mors Martell who succeeded her, not her son by Davos Dane, for by the Dornish had come to adopt the many laws and customs of the Rhoynar. Though the memories of Mother Rhoyne and her 10,000 ships were fading into legend. We got one more segment, guys. Holy crap. We covered a lot. That 10,000 ships was a lot. All right. I don't want to cover too much of the Doom of Valyria. I don't know why, but like the ESO stuff isn't getting me, like, I don't really care as much about, like, compared to like the founding of all the Westeros and seeing all the pieces come together for Westeros. With the destruction of the Rhoynar, Valyria soon achieved complete domination. What-de-doo! From the Narrow Sea to Slaver's Bay. Yeah, cool. You own Essos. Who cares? The Valyrians established their westernmost outposts on the island that will become known as Dragonstone some 200 years before the Doom. No king opposed them, though the local lords of the Narrow Sea made some effort to resist it. The strength of Valyria was too great, and with their arcane arts, the Valyrians raised the citadel at Dragonstone. So, yeah. Cool. They're big and powerful and stuff. It's weird that they never tried to conquer Westeros, right? Isn't it? I think it's a little weird. Like, they made it all the way to Dragonstone. Dragonstone's, like, right there. So, 2 centuries passed. Centuries in which the coveted Valyrians still became the trickle into the southern 7 kingdoms. So, all that time, so it's 2 centuries when they are at the height of their power that they existed alongside Westeros, almost as we know it today, with all the main 7 kingdoms are formed, right? But the Reach has Gardener Kings, the Stormlands is Dondarrions, Durandons, I always get them mixed up. The rivers are probably mixing back and forth from all these other lands, but also from Harren the Black. Will eventually take it all. And then, the north are still Starks. Down south, we got Nymeria with her, Dornish, the Martells. So, and then House Aaron up in the Vale. So, we're kind of all ready, right? So, 2 centuries pass, and now we can start trading. So, now this is when Valyrian still swords start trickling into the 7 kingdoms. Not so swiftly enough for all the lords and kings who desired it, because, they had to, apparently the Lannisters had to try really hard to get one. It was not unknown. It occurred frequently as time passed. Valyria felt its outpost was secured, and the Dragon Lords thus continued their schemes and intrigues and playing with the gods and the volcanoes. And then, unexpected to all, save perhaps Aenar Targaryen and his maiden daughter Dany's the Dreamer, the Doom came. So, good old Aenar. Hey, you must be Targaryen, because your name's dumb. Aenar with his brother Baenar and his wife Thanar and Fanar. And they're all doing it. And Dany's the Dreamer, who said, "Hey, Daddy Aenar, let's go over to the Dragonstone and get away from it before this doom happens." To this day, no one knows what caused the doom. Most say it was a natural cataclysm, a catastrophic explosion. Some people think because all the 14 flames erupt together, so some people think that it's because they were digging too close and made all of it, the mines made all the 14 flames erupt, and, what? It could be all kinds of stuff. Oh, here, of these, some argue that it was the curse of Garen the Great. You remember him? At the last coming to fruition. Oh, Garen, you didn't have anything to do with it, you Roynish liar. Others speak of priests of R'hllor calling upon the flames, their fire god, and their queer rituals. Some wedding the fanciful notion of Valyrian magic, the reality of the ambitious great houses of Valyria, have argued that it was a constant whirl of conflict and whatever. So they fought and assassinated each other until the fires blew up. Okay. God, like I said, I really don't care. I'll move on. The proudest city in the world was gone in an instant. So fabled empire vanquished in a day. The lands of the long summer, once the most fertile in all the world, were scorched and drowned and blighted in hoopy food. So that's page 26. 27 is the last one we'll cover, and I don't even think I'm going to cover too much of it. In the wake of all the I'll read the top. In the wake of all the conflicts and the struggles that continue to this day over the disputed lands, the plague of the free companies were born that took root. Okay, well, that's not that interesting. It's just people are still fighting over all these lands, and that's why free companies are a big thing, right? Yeah. It says here that's where the Smoking Sea and everything was made. So the Demon Road. Oh, cool. Let's talk about the Demon Road. That's interesting. So it says, I'm going to get to, so in fact, the road that joins Volantis to Slaver's Bay has been known as the Demon Road. It is best avoided by all sensible travelers, and men who have dared the Smoking Sea do not return, as Volantis learned during the Century of Blood, which is a century after the Doom, where everyone was killing each other for everything. That when the fleet is sent to claim the peninsula of Vanquish, there was rumors of men living still among the ruins of Valyria and its neighboring cities, Oros and Tyra. Yet, despite this, saying that the Doom still holds its grip on Valyria. So a few cities away from the heart of Valyria remain inhabited, however. Places founded by the Freehold and subject to it. So yeah, like your Volantises and your Leases and your Tises and your Feces and your whatever, your feces. The most sinister of these is Mantaries, a place where the men are said to be born twisted and monstrous. Ugh. Some of these attribute this to the city's presence on the Demon Road. I don't even know if I know this place. Its reputations of Tolos, where the finest singers in the world can be found, and the city of... Oh, okay, so this is a different place now. And then Valyria on its island is less sinister and less noteworthy as well, as it's never made ties to the Giscari. God, I'm reading about nothing. All right, there you guys go. Let's call it here. We made it to page 31, and we're going to start the Reign of the Dragons. So I read first part. I didn't read it, really. But I got through here, so that's 30 pages. So I think that's a pretty good chunk. So we made it through the ancient history, and when we take up time on part 2, we'll start the Reign of the Dragon, and then we'll move into the Targaryen King. So part 2, we can go all the way through probably the Targaryen Kings. Yeah, it's going to be a lot more pages, but it's going to be a lot more fun, too. So there you go. Take your bookmark. Remember, save your page, about page 31. So that was it. Thank you to the few people who watched during the live stream, and to everybody who watches this afterwards. If you saw my opening tag, I am now part of the Benverse. So friends of our late friend Ben Rayner, we all kind of got together and we decided to make a little collaboration, a little group, and later James. And we were calling it the Benverse. So please go back to that tag, whatever, check out all of their channels, subscribe to all of them. We are now under the umbrella and united in our friendship that we all had with Ben Rayner. So, yeah. And on a less serious note, like, subscribe, and please, I will be doing part 1 or part 2 if you want it, and we'll start with the Targaryen Kings. Thank you for watching. If you want to hear me talk more about the Song of Ice and Fire, I have a bunch of videos, shorts, and others about Song of Ice and Fire characters. Peace.